Hello, dear chess lovers. In this first episode of 2025, I am welcoming chess coach Ono. Ono, welcome to the show. You are not
Thank you for
Yoko
having me.
Ono. You're Yoko Ono, right? We are talking about chess coach Ono, guys. That's a story that I should tell all my subscribers. So when I first told my subscriber that he needs to fetch me a thumbnail for my episode with Ono, chess coach, he gave me this. He gave me Yoko Ono, right? And then I had to correct him, of course, as the chess coach Ono. You're with us, man. I mean, that will be, both ways will be fun episode, but I rather, prefer
I
a
love
coach
it.
like
I
you.
told my dad was so well known.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming, Ono. Ono, you are a chess author, chess coach, chess blogger, used to be a podcast host as well, and you write these extremely insightful blogs on Lichess. Also, I will post a link on your Substack. I thoroughly enjoy reading your stuff. It's a great pleasure and honor to host you today. We will talk about so many good things about improvement, teaching beginners, especially adults, rating anxieties, psychology, and New Year resolutions. You're a perfect guy to start this new year. Thank you so much again to join this show, man.
Well, thanks very much for having me, John. And yeah, what a kind introduction.
Yes, sir. So, Ono, can you tell us a bit about your chess improvement journey? When did you start this beautiful game? And a brief story, please, of your improvement.
Sure. I started playing about just over 4 years ago now, when the Queen's Gambit came out with all
Oh.
the other adult improvers.
Oh yeah, I just talked to Carmen Hellman about this. It will be published before our episode. She also started with the Queen's Gambit, actually. Thank
Yeah,
you, Queen's
yeah, yeah.
Gambit.
I think it's amazing that people like myself, Cameron, um, you know, Aiden, like there's just so many people that
Even
started at that
Aiden.
time and have managed
So
to
many.
make chess like their business or at least a big um, content creator
Yes,
platform out of it. It's really nice.
yes.
But yeah, I started around that time as well. We were living in Spain in a tent then,
Really?
and so chess was kind of I did a lot of physical labor on the farm, and then yeah, it was nice to do something
Mental.
cerebral at the end of
Yeah.
the day. So I got into it. Didn't really take it that seriously for the first year, but I think I made good progress considering. I think it was about 1300chess.com at the end of that first year.
Yeah.
And yeah, then just sort of continued from there. I will say I was very unhappy in the second year because nothing really happened. But then,
Aha.
yeah,
You
I
didn't see you didn't see any rating change in the second year. It stayed in 1300 or what?
not yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'd switched to Lichess at that point, but yeah, I was
Mm.
like stuck. I think at around 1600. I set this ridiculous rating target for myself when I first started chess. Like, oh, year one I
Uh-huh.
want to be 1200. Year two I want to be 1400. Year three I want to be 1600.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of what happened, except what really happened was year one I was 1200, year two I was 1200, and then year three I started playing over the board and I was 1600, right?
Wow.
So everything went as expected, except I was miserable in the middle.
Right.
you
The
know?
middle misery. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's how plateaus go, right? You're just unhappy, but then ultimately you get where you want to go, and you have 2 weeks of happiness. So
Yeah.
uh,
2 weeks of happiness and then misery again.
yeah, but
Love it.
yeah, so I didn't make so much progress in the second year, and then I started playing over the board, and yeah, was pleased to find out, I guess, that a
Mm.
classical time control, I was around. Yeah, I was an intermediate player, and yeah, and I've been playing. So yeah, after the first 2 years, we moved to the Netherlands. I got to play over the board chess, and played over the board chess all last season, and I'm now playing this year for the club's team in the Dutch league, the
Yeah.
evening league here. So that's been amazing. I've loved that experience playing
Really
chess as
cool.
part of the team, and
Yeah.
it feels like serious tournament chess.
Stakes are high. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. The
Um,
Netherlands has a very good chess culture, by the way. You're living in the good country for
oh
sure.
yeah, I'm so lucky. Yeah,
Yeah, you're lucky.
chess clubs are very busy here, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big part of the culture.
Absolutely. Yeah. First of all, blunders. You wrote an amazing piece on the blunders, and especially for not finding those triggers, especially for adult improvers, not finding those triggers that can prompt us to check for blunders. I'm now working on a Blunder-Check course, So you're just a perfect guest as well to talk about these things. Your method is like twofold. It's interesting because so far I didn't hear this from many people. So this two stages of checking for blunders. The first stage is, I made a course about this by the way, the first stage is called ground yourself. You say whenever your opponent makes a move, you ask people to say ground yourself, which means what is the opponent's last move does, right?
Yeah.
What do they
What does
want
the
to
move
play?
do?
Right. What does the
Yeah.
move do? What would be their next move if I don't make a move right now, right? That's what you mean by ground yourself stage. That's easier in some sense, yeah, to establish because you see this highlight by the opponent's last move, right? Bang, they made a move, and that can serve like a trigger for you to see their next move, given that move, right? But how about the final part? Because to me, that's the most interesting part. That's where the blunders happen. Blunders, in my book, is your move changes something that allows a winning tactic for the opponent, right? It's not that you're missing the opponent's threat by their last move. It's that you're making a move that makes a change that allows them to defeat your move, right? So
Yeah.
it's the very thing that your move undoes in some sense or unprotects. So, and in your book, you basically say it's lacking this trigger basically, and you say check yourself, right? That's what you ask people to do. Check yourself.
Sure, and I think that part of the post, and that's the hardest thing, right? Because everyone has their own blunder check. I think
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of simple blunder checks. You should be able to do it in 10 or 15 seconds, right? You should still be able to do these blunder checks in your rapid game. What's the move do? What does this piece attack? What when you're making your move? What does my move no longer do? What am I undefending, right? It should just be one, two, three, right? You're giving your
Right.
subconscious a chance at least to see something, right? And if you miss something, you miss something, right? But at least you can say I looped, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not going to see anything if you don't loop. So, but yeah, and you know, I know that Dan, that you interviewed, Dan Bok, he has
Yeah.
a similar thing. There's lots of variations on this. I know that Aiden as well, when I spoke to him, he wanted to make it more memorable, so he had some weird thing about like some movie quote.
Yeah. So how was it again? Arnold Schwarzenegger. Can you imitate his voice? Like, who is your
I don't
daddy
know.
and what does he do? Right? Who?
That's it. Yeah, yeah. He said, "Who's your daddy and what does he do?" But it's the same thing. It's a bit. Mine's is maybe a bit more boring, right? What does the move do? What's the move no longer do?
Yeah.
Everyone has these checklists, and whatever works for you, I think is great. You know, as long as it's quick. I don't like the, what diagonals and if the checklist's too long, I think then it's not realistic.
I see.
Um,
Yeah.
for time management of things. And well, anyway, that's my opinion. But the hardest thing about the blunder check isn't the blunder check. It's getting to do it, right? And everyone's been there. You go through a classical game, you check every single move, and then something happens, right? There's the emotion of the game. You're in time trouble, and you just don't do the blunder check on one move, and that's it.
Right.
You only need to not do it once, and that's the end of the game. It's the
Yeah.
worst thing about chess. But,
That's the worst thing about
so,
chess, right? We will talk about philosophy of chess later on, by the way. You know what a cruel game this
sure.
is, love and hate relationships. Also, you wrote about this as well. You know that's quite fascinating to me as well. You know what made you stop Dungeons and Dragons and move to chess? You know, like all these things. And I also heard this from many subscribers. He says the main problem is in the heat of a battle when moves are played in a certain rate. Yeah, to catch yourself to yeah, just take a step back. It's even as Aiden says, right? Hold on a second. To Aiden Rainer, that's the most important step. Hold on a second part. Before your intuition kicks in, before you make a move like habitually, right? You
Mhm.
just hold on a second. It's also a little bit counterintuitive. Also in life, in chess, you know, like as the moves are played when you're in time trouble, for example, how do you find that, you know? Discipline to always check for these things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
Yeah,
that's one thing that isn't in the article that I think I need to write an update to is to find that trigger to actually do the blunder check. And for me, at least over the board, I think it's much easier over the board than it is online. But for
right.
me, it's a pen, right?
Interesting.
When my opponent makes a move, every single move I forget to do my blunder check, right? I pick up my pen and I go, oh yeah, and I put my pen down and I do okay, what's the move do? What's the move no longer do? Okay, and then I put my pen up again. You watch me play chess, I just pick my pen up, put it back down, pick up again, write down the move. And it's the same with my move. I'm a hoverer, you see the hoverers. I'm like, oh yeah,
Right,
right. It's like I need to move my arm, and then I'm like, oh right, yeah, okay, I'll just do the
right.
quick check, right? What am I undefending? What's my move do? What am I no longer doing? Okay, right. Here you go, play my move. And so, but I think it's finding that whatever it is for you, if you're playing online, maybe it's like touching the trackpad on your laptop or your mouse.
Right.
But for me, it's like this pen. is like my link to my blunder check. And, I
Amazing.
touch it and then I put it back down and I do my blunder check. So trying to
Yeah.
find something like that, maybe you should sit on your hands and then when your hands come out, I don't know,
Right.
something that works for you. But for me, the blunder check is the easy part, right? If you can do it, then you can kind of alleviate responsibility as well. Because I think chess, before you make a move, you have so much anxiety around the what if this is the blunder? And everyone's like,
Yeah.
I'm looking everywhere at once. Like, is my position going to explode? But at least if you answer these questions and you don't see anything, your subconscious doesn't wave any red flags,
Mm.
you can make your move and at least say, I looked, right? And
Right.
you can almost take away responsibility because there's some things you can't look for every single piece for pawn sacrifice, for example, before you move, right? That's
Yeah.
just unrealistic.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're going to miss something. And you should be doing the work on pattern recognition in the background to make sure that you do recognize things quicker
Yeah.
when you look. But as long as you look, there's nothing else you can do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that also involves so many patterns, tactical pattern recognition, right? Seeing those loose pieces, alignments. But obviously, you need to like remind yourself to look for these things and find some sort of a habit that you do it regularly. I will write it down actually. I will incorporate your idea to my blunder check course. That advice that associated with pen or hovering, hand hovering on the piece. That can before touching the piece, you can visualize that piece moving and then asking all these questions. What am I unprotecting if I move the piece? Can they attack my newly moved piece on its new square? Right? I think these two questions are very good, by the way. If you have to come up with
Mm.
some broader questions, what am I unprotecting if I make this move? And can they attack my piece that is about to move? Yeah,
Yeah,
before
it's
dealing
good.
with all the checks, loose pieces, alignments, pass pawns, well, I will talk about these things in the blunder check because I have to make it as comprehensive as possible, right? I have to follow the
Sure.
scientific method, but I also need to make sure that it is sort of practical in a sense, yeah. So I will tell people, as Dan Box says, is limited to maybe 2 to 3 checklist questions per time, and try to only look at these questions at a time. Once they become internalized, yeah, then you can get other checklist questions. So like, don't look at 10 different questions at a single moment because that's just unrealistic, right?
But I think there can be value in that maybe when it is a critical move, right? And
Yeah,
obviously you need to have that feeling, but most people know you're like, wow, this is
yeah,
this is this is complicated. I've invested a lot of time. Maybe it is worth at the end of a move like that to
hundred
maybe go a
percent.
bit deeper. Yeah.
Yeah, but even when it comes to forcing move algorithm, we discussed with Azad Chua about this. Checks captures threats, and usually they aren't really helpful for us. There are better ways to, let's say, look at some targets. But when you smell that this is a critical moment, absolutely the key moment of the game, then you can also just tell yourself, okay, I will be systematic. I will look at every single check, every single capture, every single threat because I feel this moment is the key. So
Yeah.
it's all about this meta stuff as well, just like knowing the key moment and taking much time in those moments and go through different questions. But oh no, you wrote again about so many good things, especially for adult struggles. How adults struggle with chess. Your own story. I mean, you're an adult improver yourself, so I will also want to get something about this as well, like your personal story and so on. And how do you actually see this? Because you wrote a beautiful post about toddler mentality, child with a balloon, and how it connects to chess. I guess your main point was that while kids are naturally explorative, curious, they just love the game and play without so much thinking about the end results, adults tend to overthink and overstudy, and they need to overlearn stuff before they apply it to real games, to convert them into a skill. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like a brief summary of Child with Balloon post, please.
Sure. I mean, yeah, the post was inspired when my kid was. I think I wrote that like 2.5 years ago, and yeah, my kid saw a balloon for the first time, and he just did everything with it. He was hitting it off my head, trying to
Yeah.
put it in the sock, licking it, whatever. And I gave the same balloon to my wife that evening. She just sort of batted it away. Was like, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
You're so weird." And I think that kind of sums up the difference. And I kind of talked about like imagine you just watch, Jean's latest video about attacking with the H pawn or something,
Yeah.
and you're excited about it. You're like, wow, this new concept, right? I love it. I'm gonna try it out. If you were a kid, you just start every move with H4 or
Right.
H5, right? You just play with the concept, and you wouldn't really care about your results. And I think adults are so reluctant to do that. We're so worried.
Mm.
Well, we can maybe get into exactly what it is, but actually, I see that in my students a lot. It's a lot of people don't play chess for
Mm,
very different reasons. But if you want to get better at chess, you have to play chess.
right.
Chess is, I think everyone thinks chess is like getting a PhD, like you can somehow study
Yeah.
your way to to um, to chess mastery. But I think chess is a lot more like swimming, and no one ever learned how to swim sitting at the side of the pool with a stack of library books.
Right.
So I was basically just speaking about that, and I think a lot of people are aware that skill is more important than knowledge in chess, but certainly that was something that I was guilty of at the time, which is why I was writing the article.
Yeah.
I knew that that was something I was doing. Yeah.
So you caught yourself to be studying too much, opening courses after opening courses, maybe so much endgame theory, without really trying to apply it in your games, right? Or like,
Yeah. Or yeah, definitely not feeling free to experiment in my games, at least for me, probably because of my ego, just caring what other people think my rating is, and
right?
you don't want to lose a game, so why would I experiment? Why would I take the risk?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but obviously that's a very short-term mindset. And yeah, so I think for a lot of people it's anxiety um, about the rating. I think that stops a lot of people from playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we can discuss, like, I mean, what are the potential remedies then? What are the potential solutions to that, right? Like, obviously, some adults are more, let's say, they have more higher tolerance for losses. They have like better growth mindsets, right? Like, not everyone is created equally. We can maybe later on come up with some certain, let's say, what will be the ideal adult? We can give some, points to different skills, resiliency, let's say, motivation and the growth mindset, and what will be our, like, let's say, best adult improver for best improvements. But we're all humans, of course, and rating really is a thing that stops many. I'm, of course, as a coach, I know it myself. I have many students also struggle with this. um, do you then recommend people, for example, to play against bots, maybe stockfish, take some training game positions, try it in a medium that is low stakes? Can there be one solution like that? What do you say?
Um, I think obviously there's value in playing out certain positions against the computer, especially if it's, like semi-theoretical end games, like a 4 versus 3 rook end game or something.
Hmm.
But I try and discourage people from playing against the computer because I think everyone knows there's no real person. That's another reason I think that people don't play is that
Hmm.
because of the person that is in front of them, or even they perceive to be in front of them as being better than them, or like trying to get them, or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that can be a potential remedy. At least it's something that's helped me is to try and to really just respect my opponents,
Hmm.
to see the person sitting across the table from you and just know that they're a good chess player, like regardless of their rating. To
Yeah.
know that they can play really good moves, and that takes away a lot of the anxiety. Because for me, like there's for a long time, there's nothing worse than playing a lower rated player because of my ego. It's like I can't lose this game. It's too embarrassing.
Yeah.
And you know, but you think if one of your friends lost to a lower rated player, like you
That's
don't
right.
care. You're gonna care if it's you, right? And so. You don't think any worse of them. You don't suddenly think, oh, they're at that rating now as well, right? And
Yeah.
so you get so wrapped up in this number, I think. But no, I don't think playing against bots helps because I think you're just kind of avoiding. I mean, obviously it has a place in chess for training,
Uh-huh.
but I think in terms of getting rid of that anxiety of building up to it, I think you just got to rip the band-aid off, as they say, and just dive in and try and play games and
Yeah.
to remember why you're playing them.
There's also this Zen mode on Lichess, right? You can just, not see the ratings of the opponent, for example. Some people
That's true.
recommend that as well. That could be helpful as well. If that rating itself of the opponent is, let's say, affecting your decisions, that could be one way.
I don't think I'll improve this year because of what I'm
Uh-huh.
studying, because I'm trying to build my own opening repertoire this year.
Right.
Because I know what openings I'm going to play now. Like, I'm not going to change them. I think there's a need to experiment with openings initially, but once you understand, or you think you understand, or you know your style and what kind of chess you like, what positions
Yeah.
you want to play, if you can pick your own repertoire, you can you can choose those positions largely. I mean, obviously, within reason, there's always going to be positions in your repertoire that you maybe don't want to play, but you can try and maximize the chances that you're going to get to play in the structures that you enjoy.
Right.
And so it's going to take me a long, long time to do that, though. And I think that's another thing that adults are able to do that kids maybe aren't, right? I worked out it's probably going to take me a full year. And will I improve at chess in the next year if the only thing I'm learning additionally, I mean, obviously I'm doing my other stuff, I'm playing my rapid games, I'm doing my tactics, my daily stuff to kind of keep my gym work, if you like, to keep fit. But in terms of what I'm learning right now, I'm really trying to learn this build and learn this repertoire. And that will benefit me maybe in like 3 years' time when I fully memorize the repertoire and I've had enough experience of over the board games in those kind of structures that I'm playing. Great, because I know I'm going to get into those structures. It's like specializing, right?
Right.
I think adults should do that as well. That's another thing I think that is helpful for adults. You know, I think taking a generalist approach, it's like, well, maybe if you live till you're 200, but maybe you just have to specialize a little bit. But yeah, I think that's another thing that adults can do in terms of the planning. But yeah, and also in terms of converting this knowledge into skill. I mean, everyone learns in different ways, but yeah, that's something I've done is build this repertoire. But something I think that adults are maybe better at doing or can do is it's easy to chop and change, like to see a video about endgames and be like, oh, I don't know anything about these endgames. I should study those for 3 days. But at least for me, and I guess everyone's different, for me to even kind of grasp rook endgames, I had to study them really intensely for like 3 months. And then I got really into them, and I probably spent like a solid 6 months only looking at rook endgames. And I need that. I know that Aiden, who you interviewed as well, you know, he got a lot of time for Aiden and what he says. And, you know, he talks about like specialize and intensify. And I think that's something that is really useful for turning knowledge into skill, because I mean, I really struggle with my memory, you know, and for me, especially learning this repertoire just now, like I'm going completely overboard with it. I'm trying to explain every single move like I'm 5 years old to myself. And then I'm repeating it over and over again. I'm building these custom model games that someone I heard interviewed, who I should credit, but I've forgotten their name. This national master creates custom model games in his opening, and like that's not that's one way that really helps me to like fully immerse myself in this one variation, right? Is to build a custom model game and to pick my moves and to really try and understand what's happening and go down branches and spend like days with one game, basically. So I think this isolate and intensify thing is a good way to turn knowledge into skill. And I definitely did that with the rook end games as well. I know you were talking about setting up custom positions, for example.
Yes. So how do you do it? So let's say you take an endgame book. You before you even look at the moves, you take them into a Lichess study and you just play against some stockfish before, or you try it yourself, and only then you read the annotations. Right? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, I wish I did it that way. That's definitely how I advise and how I try and do it now. But no, I bought like 3 different rook endgame books. I think I had like Medness's book, which is called Rook Endgames, Practical Rook Endgames.
Yeah.
I think there's another one, Korchnoy's book, is also Practical Rook Endgames. Like they all have the same name.
They're all named the same, yeah.
Yeah. I read way too many of them, right? And I was reading about, I think I wrote in the blog that reading about I don't know, like maybe 4 or like one side has an outside pass pawn, right? And I read about it over and over and over again. You don't need to do that. You need to read about it once. It's like, okay, here's the general concepts about how you want to try and win this, right?
Yeah.
Or how you want to try and draw this. And then you just want to play with those, right? Because it's not endgame theory. It's like almost theory, but not really. Right. You know the principles, and stockfish will destroy you every time, right? Especially, you know, my level, like it's sort of club level, you've got no chance against full strength stockfish, you know.
Okay.
Well, at least it depends, right? But stockfish has this incredible ability to trick you in the simplest positions.
For sure. For sure.
but at least it will show you the way, right? And you'll practice, and eventually you'll get it. I remember trying to convert two connected pawns in a rook versus rook endgame, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I managed to do it like eventually, but you really need to practice it over and over and over again. And then I
Absolutely.
remember seeing Pragnanda play. I can't remember who it was. I think it was in the World Cup a couple of years ago, and he had this ending on the board, and he had like 3 seconds left on his clock,
And
and
he
it
did
was
it.
unbelievable. That's what you need. You need your hand to play the move
Yes.
for you, and you could see he
Yes.
was doing that. He was just like, you
Bam, bam,
could
bam,
always
bam,
see
bam,
his
bam.
hand move. It was
Yeah.
it was unreal, and I think you can get to that point if you repeat these endings enough and these
Right.
innings enough. Same with your openings. You don't want to think anymore. You want just your brain to be like duh, 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 duh. Same with the tactics as
Absolutely.
well, the basic tactics.
Absolutely.
You want to see that position and just fork, skewer, pin, just
Yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. Those important patterns and through years of practice or like repeated practice of important chess chunks, that's also important, right? How do you choose the importance? Frequency of occurrence, of course, yeah? So that's also, maybe a coach can also help you in that sense, These are the most important chess prioms, Prioms meaning actions given those patterns, for example. And then you do, repeated practice on those, especially with endgames, trying to convert against Stockfish. There are different approaches. Sometimes Stockfish can choose different pathways, and that's also interesting. Yeah, you can choose different ways. You can explore different pathways to convert them into a skill like that. I also give this to my students as well, like especially for beginners. Most of their games are decided by extra material. One side hangs a piece, a queen, let's say, and then they need to convert them in the later stages of the game. Huh? So for that, I think it's very useful that they get some positions. Let's say an extra bishop, they convert. Maybe a queen versus a bishop, for example. They convert against Stockfish. This they can probably even beat highest level Stockfish, because some of my students are doing that already. They can beat highest level Stockfish. Let's say I have a queen, you have a bishop, 6 pawns each, yeah, something like this.
Sure.
And if you do it, then I put 2 rooks to both sides. This way, you also learn how to simplify the position, yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
then, yeah, right, because it teaches you to, I have an extra queen versus bishop, so I will keep it simple. I will just trade the rooks and I will win. So that also they gain confidence in that sense by first converting to queen versus bishop. They gain confidence, and then they learn how to transform certain positions as well. Yeah, it's a huge part, I think, of improvement, and converting those positions are just crucial. Also, rook endgames, as we mentioned, they are the most frequent endgame types. We should spend more time on rook endgames, especially at your level. I think they are becoming much more relevant, even before, of course. That I noticed as a coach as well. At some point, people cannot really handle rooks. They don't know how to play actively with their rooks, for example. That's strategic rook endgames. They can paralyze their rook on a pawn, for example. They don't choose active defense. All these things also should be, let's say, taught in a nice, clean examples with lots of explanations and also training as well. Yeah, it's an experiential stuff. It's an experiential knowledge that you want to achieve in the end, for sure. Okay, so, and also I agree with you, by the way, with adults, limited time, they need to, let's say, be smarter when it comes to choosing openings. And I agree with you that it has to be somehow a limited repertoire that they know by heart. It has to be sound and solid, logical. Yeah, it cannot be just random like traps, but they can diversify. They can just enrich their pattern knowledge within that opening
Yeah.
through repeated experience. I mean, especially for adults. Let's say you have only 8 hours per week on chess. Let's say 10 hours per week on chess. It makes sense to choose that path. And again, give yourself time as you did. I'll give myself 2-3 years to deeply know this opening. Then you can even go like deeper, as you mentioned. You can choose your model games. You can do guess the move training. You can pick a model player and you can guess the moves on that very opening, for example. That's like quality versus quantity. It's almost like a real game, by the way. That training is amazing in terms of intensity. If you do it properly, it's like almost like a real game. You take your time for each decision, then you get feedback from the engine later on.
Yeah.
And you can accompany that with the quantity over quality, which means looking at a bunch of master games in that opening, but with with very, very like quickly, just let's say 5 seconds per move. But you look at a bunch of games. This is also, I think, good to accompany that, because then you basically have a pattern recognition of which piece is going where in that opening, What are the typical piece placements, pawn breaks, and so on. Dan Heisman also recommends that, actually, for opening study.
Yeah, I feel very lucky in that. I kind of shouldn't. I feel very paranoid about my openings now that it's becoming set that people can prep for me. But Uh, I feel very lucky that my repertoire is like loosely based on a story by Grandmaster Keith Arkell. So,
Yeah.
I have his games, but yeah, I think if you can find someone who plays the same openings as you and whose style you enjoy, then yeah, you can do that. You can
Yeah.
find their Lichess handle or their chess.com handle and just
So easy.
start pressing the button. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually very easy. Yeah. Again, across the years, my model players were different. I chose Najdorf and I looked at a bunch of Kasparov and Fischer games. I tried to guess the moves. It also gives you confidence because I feel like I just crashed, I crashed Kramnik yesterday or whatever, like whoever Kasparov was crashing in those Najdorfs. You really feel like you're playing as a grandmaster. You see the grandmaster moves, you think through. It's actually quite a beautiful training as well. Again, adults with good patience and discipline, they can do it. Do
Yeah.
you then give some training plans to your students? Let's say a certain weekly training plan that they follow, right? Do you
Um,
believe in that?
yeah, I mean, to an extent, I think, that's one of the things I am able to do as someone who has done it myself, has dragged myself from this, learning how the pieces move to uh, sort of intermediate club level, is to just cut through the noise and tell people, I spent so long doing things that just were a waste of time. And it's nice to be able to pass on to my students now that, just don't do that. And so, yeah, make
Yeah.
sure that everyone plays regularly. That's the most important thing, that they play and analyze.
Uh-huh.
And of course, we do that together in lessons. But if they can try and at least derive one takeaway from a key moment, even if it's just a rapid game, to try and take one thing away, and to do the pattern recognition exercises. My friend
Uh-huh.
Martin Eustason, he is the tactics ladder.
Yeah,
He's
Martin, right? Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. I know him as well. Yes,
he's just
yes.
digitized his books. So I used to have people get a Chessable Pro membership and adjust the spaced repetition because it's set up for opening memorization, not for tactics. So
Uh-huh.
people should really adjust that. Otherwise, you're just going to memorize the tactical positions. You don't want to memorize the puzzle. You want, oh, this is the one with the rook
Yeah.
sacrifice. You want
Mm.
your brain to recognize the pattern subconsciously. So setting that up on Chessable and doing easy books like Everyone's First Chess Workbook, or just the simpler the better. So I make sure that
Hmm.
people do pattern recognition every day, um, and depending on the time control they're playing, calculation, to do just one longer puzzle a day. But if they're playing classical games, I think that's less
They're
important. So
good
I make sure that people
choices.
do that, like that's their core, the skill part of chess.
Mm.
I've never, I think chess improvement has in a weird way been solved. I think if you
Mm.
do those things every day and you work hard on that, you will get better at chess. It's not optional. It's inevitable.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think up at least at the level I teach, right, to bring
Right.
them up
Right.
to that intermediate level. And so when it comes to knowledge, I tell my students to just follow their enthusiasm, because I think just like in school, if someone tells you go and study maths, you'll hate maths really quickly.
Yeah.
So if you want to read a strategy book, go get into it. If you want to get obsessed with the rook end games like I did, go become obsessed with the rook end games. Follow
Mm.
your enthusiasm, and yeah, I try and encourage people to only work on one thing at once. Because of this isolate and intensify thing. Try not
That
to jump
method.
around too much.
Yeah, yeah, I also agree with that. Also, given again time limitations and also given the vast amount of resources these days, this FOMO mentality. Oh, I'm missing out on the next one.
Yeah, and you
So
have to
it's
jump
huge.
all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I know many adults also love chess stuff. They love chess books. They like to decorate their bookshelves with those books that they never read. But yeah, we need to do some work on this. But I agree with the pattern part as well. So crucial. Also with adults, if they never like learned any chess pattern as a kid, right? So the good thing is this: long-term memory is unlimited, right? As long as you put those patterns nicely ingrained in your brain, there is no limit to it. You
Yeah.
can learn as many chess patterns as you want, as you can, right? So that's also something that we can compete with children as well, if we are structured, if we know the right patterns, if we train the right patterns as well.
Maybe
But
that's
yeah,
personal though, right? Like Dan's doing with his flashcards, right? They're coming
right.
from his openings, and I'm trying to create flashcards from these custom games, for example. Like, hey, here's an idea that Stockfish keeps showing me, right? This knight maneuver,
Right.
over and over again. Or like maybe it's just a weird move, like just A5. You know, why does that? Why? And like really trying to understand, like, what is this move doing? Like, because nothing else is happening in this position. Why does it just want queenside space? You know, what is this?
Right.
But trying to understand and maybe make that your pattern, right? Because you play this
Absolutely.
opening or whatever.
Absolutely. It's connected to your openings and your own chunks in that sense. Yeah.
I would say, like, just maybe as a final point on it, though, like, I just love chess. And I know a lot of adults love that aspect of it where you just sort of feel like you're sitting in some, like, library and you're just studying and you're just enjoying what you're learning. I do think there should be space for that. You know, not everything you do has to be absolutely optimal because you have this set
Yes.
amount of time a day. I mean, you can enjoy it as well, right? You can go on a
100%.
tangent and learn about a player that you're really interested in from the past. I
Absolutely.
love that stuff as well, you know, and I think it
Absolutely.
shouldn't be overlooked.
I think so. I'm a chess nerd myself. I used to read a lot of like historical books, whatever, like yeah, biographies and so on. I mean, I find it fascinating. Yeah, I don't regret those days, so to
Sure.
speak. Yeah. Does that actually connect to your post on what's the purpose of chess puzzles and training games? You wrote something about that, right? Why do we solve chess puzzles? What's the function of chess puzzles?
Sure,
You wrote
yeah.
something about that.
I think a lot of the time we never really stopped at, there's so much chess advice, right? You get the best chess advice from the best adult improvers who've gained the most points in the least amount of time,
Yeah.
and you try and copy them. But I think a lot of people don't really stop and think, why am I doing this? You know, everyone says, oh, you should do tactical puzzles, but why?
Mm,
What's the
mm,
point? And so I just wanted to write about that and to differentiate basically between the subconscious part of really trying to ingrain these patterns. And I call them opportunities. You know, if you notice, hey, this piece is pinned, that is the point of this, like that is where what I'm calculating towards, probably, but
mm.
I don't know yet. Or hey, I see the queen and king are this forking distance apart.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Alignment.
start, but you need to spot that opportunity first, and that I think is subconscious largely.
Yes.
Um, and then the other side of it is calculation. I think where visualization,
Mm.
start working towards that. But I think when you stop to think about why am I doing this, that's when the happiness comes back, right?
Aha.
You don't feel anxious about playing the game if you can really concretely say, oh yeah, the reason I'm playing this game is to expose myself to my new opening repertoire, right? I want to see as many positions as I can from that. So maybe I'm playing blitz, and that's
Aha.
okay.
Aha.
But if you know why you're doing what you're doing, I think it becomes more valuable, and it's also
Very important.
motivating, right? It's hard to
Yeah.
sit down and calculate because calculation's hard. No one wants to do it.
For
Nothing
sure.
worse than in the middle of the game. You're like, this is so complicated. This is going to be difficult. I'm going to have to spend 15 minutes here.
Yeah.
But if you can give yourself a why, it's way easier to get in the chair and actually start doing some work. Right?
100%. And yes, you mentioned a couple of very important things there. Like why is very important. For example, why are we playing Blitz? You connect it to your opening reps, because every Blitz game has an opening stage. So in that sense, that makes some sense that you play some Blitz, not that crazy, of course, and you take, let's say, one opening lesson for your Blitz game. What would I do differently if they play the same moves again? And update your files like that,
Yeah.
or quick tactical vision, as you say. Yeah, it's a huge part of chess play, because that part we want to be very very fast, right? Like seeing those forks, alignments, back rank mate potential. I made the video about this with Azer Chua as well. Obviously, like we want to be as efficient and fast as possible with seeing those patterns. And as you grow stronger, then you add more patterns in your pattern base. Then you also become very, very fast. As Pragnananda example, right? The guy's pattern recognition on that endgame was so crazy ingrained, he could just play it directly. He could see it to the end result in some sense, yeah? Yeah. Okay, so that's how you combined it to the why question, which is one of my channel's main philosophy, by the way, is why. So it actually connects nicely to this channel as well. And maybe then we can move, yeah? What do you say about these challenges as well, like hitting plateaus? Because that's also, one frustrating part of chess, but also is what makes it beautiful, is it's not like reducible to a single algorithm. There are plateaus. There are like so many roadblocks along the way, you know, and like how do we then find the motivation in those times? We all plateau. I'm also plateauing. I plateaued many times in my life. You did as well, despite your effort sometimes, you know. Sometimes you put so much effort, you don't see any chess progress, which is, by the way, scientifically normal. You know, we sometimes even see the J-shaped curve. Like whenever you learn something new, you usually like performance drops for the moment, and then you see an increase. Yeah. So how do we then find motivation to keep on pushing in those times? How did you settle? Because the more I read your post, is like you really suffer from this sometimes. You know, this ego part kicks in, and you have this love and hate relationship sometimes with chess, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, so last year was the first season I played proper over the board chess, and it was I know ratings are very confusing just now, but I wasn't really sure where I was at, and I was worried about it because I'm teaching people chess, and I had this
Yeah.
post called, I think, Imaginary Rating Anxiety, where I had a really bad start to the season. And eventually my rating I peaked at sort of 1670 and it ended up about 1650 in old money. And then I was generously given 1800, but I didn't really earn it. But I have started this season so badly. I mean, I've been playing for the club's team. So we just got promoted. So everyone I'm playing is like between 18 and 1900. And I'm 1.5 out of 4, which is okay. But in the internal competition at the club, I have lost almost every game I've played. I think I've won one game. I have 2 draws and one game, and 8 losses. So I'm just tanking. And it's been really, really challenging. But I think confidence plays a huge part in chess, I think. And it's difficult when you can't buy a win to go into your next game. And it's really psychologically tough. But I think one thing that helps me is to try and speak to people about it. I think community in chess is really, really important. I host a hangout for patrons of the blog every 2 weeks. And that's like one of my favorite things, because it's just people can just talk about whatever's going on and everyone understands. It's the great connecting thing about chess is it doesn't matter if you're 600chess.com trying to break 1,000 or if you're trying to get the master title, right? Everyone's on weirdly the same journey, kind of making the same mistakes, just on a different level, And so I think it's good to talk about it. And my wife's a psychologist, and she is always banging on at me about how I have to separate me from me, the chess player, because there's a tendency, and I really try and ban my students from saying negative things that are, I am stupid, right? No, you're not stupid. You made a stupid chess move, maybe, right? But it's not personal. And I think when you start tying it into who you are and your sense of self, then it can be really brutal. Because of course you think you work so hard. I know a lot of adults who are spending hours, at least an hour every single day. And when you don't see your number move, there's a tendency to think I did not improve at chess, but that's almost never true. Your rating didn't go up, but you did get better at chess. It's just you need to get better at a lot of different things for your rating to actually improve.
Absolutely. It's a multifaceted thing, and you don't always see direct results. It goes back to our point again, just trusting the process and giving yourself long-term goals, and don't get discouraged by 1 or 2 tournaments, or even 2-3 months time sometimes, it can take some time for the skill acquisition to take place and many components to combine together, and almost like a shift in understanding. Actually, I mean, the brain is a mysterious organ. We don't have the full picture yet. There are so many processes involved as well, so many patterns, so many sub skills that they need to function together as well. Confidence, as you mentioned, is an effect. When all these things, as we discussed with Aidan Reiner, like all these things are also taking some place in your working memory slots when you're playing. Like your rating. What will my rating be if I win this game?
Right.
It takes your focus from the game and then you blunder, right?
Yeah, and I also think that also adults go through different things in life as well, and you're not just a chess player. You might be a parent or a partner or
Yeah.
whatever your job is, and you can be going through stuff. And yeah, I mean, I also think yourself when you sit down at the board. Some days you sit down, and you're like, wow, I can see everything today. It's going to be a good day. And other days you're like, oh, you feel like you're like, come on, let's wake up. And, so I think as an adult, you also face other challenges. Forget, like, here the games are played in the evening. It's at the club. And, people have had a whole day of work a lot of the time. It just depends what's going on,
Yes, man. Yeah. Well, I mean, I will talk to a sports psychologist maybe in 2 weeks' time. He's called Benji Porto. Maybe
you're getting Benji on. Benji's great. Oh, that's great.
You know him personally?
Yeah,
cool.
Benji comes to the Hangouts. Benji's like one of the major sources of commiseration for my chess right now. So.
It's great to have a sports psychologist, also a chess player in your Patreon Hangouts. Yeah. You can get some personal feedback from him.
Benji's great. Yeah. I'm glad you're having him on.
Yeah, I mean, because my question will be, do you have a specific question I should ask Benji? But you already probably asked him all these important questions already. But I will probably ask you about these things like rating anxiety and other mental aspects of adult improvement. My subscribers, please, if you have a specific question to be asked to a sports psychologist, also work with several chess players, let me know. Write on this video comment, and I can guide your questions to Benji Porto. It's a huge part of chess as well, as you mentioned. I mean, there are so many things to be discussed. Also, personally, from my own students, like I know sometimes I feel like a psychiatrist. I need to support them along their journey. Like I need to be very careful of what I'm saying, what I'm not saying, and so on. It's also about, again, like people start working with me, for example, and they sometimes want instant results, right? Like they're working with this coach who wrote some good courses, perhaps. And they might have these expectations. They are doing the work. They're working on chess. They feel like they're improving. They're enjoying the lessons. They get motivation to work on their chess. But then sometimes they don't see the results. Let's say in one tournament, maybe sometimes 2 tournaments. Yeah, and then some doubts kick in. Maybe I'm stupid kind of mentality kicks in, as you mentioned, which is never the case, of course. And then they somehow struggle on that part as well. So I will ask him about how he coped with this, maybe some meditation techniques, right? I guess he wants to talk about this, like how to separate this chess part, as you mentioned, from our ego or from our other part, let's say. How do we keep that separation and not identify completely with this chess part, which is ego-based and elo-based, right? You see yourself as your rating. That's also what makes chess rough, because elo, after all, is an objective measure of performance, right? Like that's one part that makes it interesting as well. It definitely shows your strength, but you should definitely have this long-term mentality to see the effect of your strength with lots of good practice.
I think I think it's so funny, right? Like I recently crossed 2000 on Lichess Rapid, right? And so I hadn't played, so this is me again escaping my own ego, right? I haven't played chess on my public facing account in like years, right? Because I can't do it, right? I won't touch it because so I'm just as bad as everyone else, right? But that does give me, again, it's like, well, I'm going to play every day if I play on this account, right?
Right.
So I think I ended up peaking at like 2050 or something, and it was just a good week, right? I won almost every game I played, was on fire, confidence flying through the roof. And on the way up, I was like, oh, 1900 rated player, right? Respect for that. Like, okay, I lost this game, no worries, they're 1900, fine. Then I'm 2000 for like a month. And then I'm coming back down, through the 1900s. And suddenly I'm like, oh, I can't believe I lost a 1900, right? And it's like, it's only been a month apart. But
Yeah.
somehow on the way up, like I was fine, losing a game, no problem at all. Like ego
Right.
undamaged because they're a good player. And then on the way back down again, it's like ego damaged every single time I lose. And you know,
Yeah.
it's just perception, right?
Yeah.
Nothing, the 1900s are still 1900. It's just how you
It's
view
amazing.
yourself in comparison to everyone else. And I think if you could
Yeah.
somehow let go of that, which, you know, if anyone knows how to do it, let me know, because, you know,
Yeah.
I can preach it all I want, but practicing it is really, really challenging, as I'm sure everyone who's ever played chess knows.
100%.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard.
I've been there myself as well as a player. When I look back at my chess career, I always had hard time playing against lower rated players. You know, let's say 100 rating lower, maybe 200 rating lower. I had hard time playing with them because of that very thing, that you just want to beat them at all costs. You can't take draw as a result, and then that blurs your objectivity. You know, like you take completely crazy decisions also during the game, that just to try to beat them, and then you lose, and that's brutal. That's really brutal. It's like self-fulfilling prophecy, like then yeah, your rating really gets hit after that. But I also played very well during my chess life overall against higher rated players. I almost always put my very best chess. Also because of confidence as well, right? I have nothing to lose. I can just focus on the board. Well, I don't need to prove anything anyways, so I just play. So when I look back, definitely I cannot say I was totally, let's say, independent from the ratings for both sides.
To cope, I know two things that really help me to cope with losing. One is to not resign when you know the position is over, and just give yourself a
Mm,
little bit of time. Just give yourself 5 minutes
yeah,
to get yourself in the right mindset, right? To think about, to think about your opponent, and so that you can
yeah,
shake their hand and be like, you played a good game, well done, right? And then to also speak with your opponent after the game. I think that really helps. If you
mm,
can actually get yourself to sit down and analyze, even if it's been a really, really painful one, to
yeah,
talk with them, because you're always going to get validation from your opponent, right? You've sat there together for hours. They're
for
going to
sure.
respect you as much as you respect them. And
Yeah,
you're going to talk through the game, and you're going to feel way better. The times I
right.
felt the worst about my games, I had this horrible draw in the team, right? The team needed me to win for us to win the match, and it was
Yeah,
just over. I mean, it was just winning. I was really low on the clock, and it ended up in a draw. And I shoot my opponent's hand, and I just stood up and I bit my notebook, and I was like, just couldn't get out of there fast enough.
yeah,
And that just hurt for way longer. And I know if I'd been able to just sit and analyze my opponent,
yeah,
I would have felt way better about it. But I just
100%.
sometimes you can't, right? Sometimes it's just too sore.
Yeah.
But
Team games are more difficult, yeah, because you feel more responsibility in your shoulder. Like, oh,
sure,
you disappointed your teammates. It's
yeah.
harder actually. Yeah,
But
team
again, I was the
tournaments.
only one that cared, right? I came out of there, and even one of my teammates was like, "What was your result?" It's like,
Yeah,
"What?
they have no
How do
idea.
you not know?" You
Yeah,
know?
you induce on yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just you're the only one that cares about your chest, right? It's like
Yeah.
green. Yeah,
Ultimately, that's true, right? We are the only ones who are really caring about our chess, actually,
yeah.
yeah? None of this matters so much, and that's a good note, I think.
Do you find that hard as a coach though? Because suddenly you actually have to care about other people's chess as well. It's like having
Yeah,
five different football teams that you're super
yes,
invested in.
indeed, indeed, indeed. Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things that actually makes this business a little bit hard, because first of all you cannot just take 25 different students as we discussed before the interview, because you need to pay attention to each and every student because they are different. You need to know their journey overall on their trajectories and so on. So you cannot just say, "Oh, so who are you? Do I know you? What kind of challenge do you have?" Right? You need to track them. You need to really, really also invest on their psychology in some sense. You should at least provide some support. Not that we talk about these things every single day, like 5 hours a day. But when you meet, you need to go through certain processes. When they lose, right, you need to talk about some processes and support them along the way. So it's definitely a different part than only focusing on my chess as well. And that's why I feel like I need more like expert support as well. Like Benji will be a nice guy, for example, to show me a couple of tricks, just so I don't do something wrong in some sense. Not that I think I'm doing something wrong, but it will be good to be better prepared on the psychological support of things,
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah, yeah, because I think you need to enjoy your chess. It's
Yeah,
And yeah, I've not enjoyed it this season. I think it's been really hard, but I'm really trying. I feel like I'm getting there, but
yeah,
it's just it's been hard work to try and enjoy my chess this year on an over the board losing streak.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, just trying to accept that I'm just your rating's your rating. My ratings come down. That's my current rating. I just need to accept that
100%.
and accept myself, as I'm sure Benji will talk about
Yeah.
um, when you interview him. But just try and accept that know that you're okay. Like there's nothing wrong with you. You're just playing bad chess right now, and
That's
it will
it.
get better. Right? I've never seen someone lose rating points and never recover. Right? That doesn't happen,
Right.
especially
Right.
at like our level, at club level. I think it's not. Yeah, I've never seen someone drop 200 rating points and stay there. Right? I haven't dropped that many yet, but you
Right, right, right.
know,
As long as they put the effort, I think 100%. Yeah,
yeah,
ultimately they will just. I mean, that's also the case in my own chess. If you look at my rating trajectories, like there are usually like falls. I fall, let's say, after a period of stagnation. Like I don't play many games, and then I go to a tournament. I lose, let's say, mostly. Let's say I lose 35 points, and then let's say 5 months later, I gained 50 points in like two tournaments in a row. That was full of such swings back and forth, basically. And that's probably also because I worked on my chess before I gained 50 points, right? I remember I was like very motivated to work on the chess. I got a new book, I got excited. I do guest mode training on some, Kasparov games, Fischer games. And yeah, before the tournament, for example, I was really excited, for example, before certain tournaments. And I was usually performing real nicely, when I was anticipating it and working on it and so on. But I was never like extremely structured with my training, but I always did what I would love most with chess. I find, of course, many things lovable in this game. So I could study endgames, openings, whatever, different players. But usually performance really came after those times of slightly unstructured, but really motivating work. And also not really caring so much about my rating, but really looking forward to that tournament. I will be playing as the strong players. It will be super fun. I was always having this mentality, I remember, with my, let's say, good tournaments. It really helps. I mean,
it's
that kind of mentality. Because the game is, because maybe we can maybe end up with that. Yeah, because what drove you to chess then? Because I think you were a Dungeon and Dragons player before, right? You were even writing some blog posts about this, like this, let's say, more social game. It's a board game. There are many advantages to this isolated game called chess. So then you found chess, and you don't want to go back to that anymore. You still somehow want to, let's say, spend more time with this beautiful game. So, what do you think makes this chess philosophically such a beautiful game that you don't want to give up?
Yeah, I mean, I think you gotta love the struggle of it. There's nothing I've ever done. I mean, I have a very obsessive personality, and uh, I've been through lots of different hobbies. I would say Dungeons and Dragons, sure being one of them. I
Yeah,
think the one before chess, but I think a lot of people have this experience that, especially when they're obsessive types, because if you're obsessive, you can get good at something really quick. But chess seems like
right.
a different animal.
Aha,
You can, like you say, you can study really hard for a year and your rating won't move. And
absolutely.
that, I think, I don't even know if I would say that chess is enjoyable, but it's definitely really meaningful. It
Aha,
provides my life with, meaning, just like being a parent and being, husband to my wife
right,
and things. It somehow feels deeper than I've never said that about Dungeons and Dragons or about
right,
you know
right.
anything I've been into really. So yeah, I don't know. There's something about the struggle that draws me to it, and about the connection with other people, with other chess players, because everyone's going through the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's the inherent depth of the game and the complexity of the game and the very honesty of the game. The game is so honest. Like it's like there's no hidden information. You're responsible with your decisions. Meritocracy. Real life is not really meritocratic. I mean, there are so many parameters involved. Meritocracy. Anyone can make it. It's open to everyone. It's there's so many beautiful things. It's a scientific game. You need to challenge your own beliefs before you make a move. Just like in science. You just don't have confirmation biases. You get punished if you're cocky, for example, if you're like too in your minds, like having wishful thinking tendencies and so on. So even the very nature of the game, I think, is quite beautiful. Um,
Yeah, I think chessboard, it can be like a mirror, into your
yeah,
own personality, and that's really uncomfortable. But it's a necessary thing to do if you want to improve at chess, right? Like you just said there, like over optimism in chess, like show me one person who is constantly making optimistic sacrifices that don't work and they don't also do that in their own life, right? It's almost,
Right.
I feel like chess problems are almost always reflected in your own personality, and that's really confronting. It's like
Yeah.
it's really, really confronting, and that's I think one of the greatest things about chess. It's kind of I wish I could say that I was motivated to work on myself as a human being just because of intrinsic motivation to do that, to be better. But
Yeah.
a lot of the things I've worked on in myself over the last few years have been because of chess, or at least because chess has shown me that about myself, has
Uh-huh.
shown me these flaws, but also because I want to get better at chess.
Right.
So, maybe I need to work on myself to do that a lot of the time, especially when it comes to things like how you perceive a low rated player in front of you. Like,
Mm.
that's not a great reflection on myself to
Yeah.
think I'm better than someone before the game starts. And
Right.
then, like, I don't want to admit that about myself, but I kind of have to because it's a
Yeah.
huge problem for me. And it's something I'm getting better at, but, it's not an easy thing to admit.
100%. Also shows us our own sides, as you mentioned. This brutally honest and beautiful game. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Showing us our own tendencies and biases and decision making processes and emotional reactions and tolerating losses and ratings. And yeah, I think that's all of them combined makes this game extremely beautiful and interesting and worth pursuing for life. Do you still accept new students if they want to? They can
Um,
contact you.
Yeah, I think the best way to get information is to go to my website. It's
Yeah,
theonozone.com, the onozone.com.
right. I'll put a link
And
here.
yeah, I have a wait list for students, and people can book a trial lesson there. You can see for a good match, and yeah,
Yeah.
people are I'm graduating sometimes and getting sent to Jean.
It's amazing. Yeah, two of my current students, by the way, are old Ono students, and they are one of my favorite students, actually, honestly. So Ono is definitely picking the right guys and then teaching them very good things about chess, and then graduating them. Not that I'm like such a high level coach, but I mean I'm 100% sure of giving them great fundamentals. I can see it myself, and they always have good things to say about you.
Well, and to
So
you
yeah.
after I pass them on as well. So
Thank you so much. Yeah, 100% recommended, guys, if you want to take lessons from Ono. And of course, we are looking forward to your next projects. Maybe you can write the opening course. As you mentioned, you're working on your opening stuff right now. One day you can convert it into a course. So all the beginners can benefit from it, from your approach of pattern-based, structure-based explanations, as if you're like a 5-year-old person. All these beautiful explanations. I mean, they're important for adult improvers, 100%. They will
that's
benefit
what we
them
need.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they need, right? So if it comes from a thoughtful coach like you, even better, I would say. So go in that direction. That will be great, I think. If you're coming from a couple of year plans, that will be definitely a good plan, I believe.
Very kind, John.
Yes,
Thanks so
yes.
much for having me. I think the podcast is great. I'm really enjoying the conversations you're having. So,
Thank you so much. We will probably meet again at some point because it's just starting, hopefully. And let's see what 2025 brings. So far, nobody said no, and very happy about that. And great guest so far, honestly. I mean, I learned a lot during these conversations, and great to meet and connect with all these
yeah,
beautiful people. Yes, and wishing you all the best for this new year, Ono. Hope you will break new barriers, and not that waiting is so important, but most importantly, just keep on working on this beautiful game and keep the motivation and joy, because that's what we're after all. Yeah, this beautiful, captivating game that is so enjoyable to work with and study. Yes, and my subscribers as well. Wishing you all the best for this new year, and please let us know how you find this episode. And I will catch you on the next one very soon with Benji Porto, sports psychologist. Bye bye.